Hey there, comic book fans. Welcome back to Como Comic Books, the channel that is the home of your favorite top 10 comics videos, where the lists are made up and the positions don't matter. Today, we're counting down the top 10 comics you can snag on a $100 budget for the spring of 2024. Whether you're into superheroes, indie weirdos, or thrilling, oversized adventures, I've got something for everyone in this one. Let's get started and see what I've dug up that you can add to your collection for 100 bucks. Kicking off our list at number 10, we have a Bronze Age Neal Adams Superman cover with Action Comics number 419. This issue was cover dated December 1972, but it actually hit the stands just before Halloween of that year. Action 419 is the first appearance of the Human Target in a backup story from creators Len Wein and Carmen Infantino. The Superman story in the issue was titled The Most Dangerous Man on Earth from writer Cary Bates and artist Kurt Swan. Now, the real star of the show with this one is the Neal Adams cover. Action 419 is an example of an antiquated exercise you used to be able to do at your LCS or at home with your own copy of the Overstreet Price Guide. You'd pick a random DC or Marvel title from this era and scroll through the values. If there was a random jump in price for a particular issue or issues, chances were it was because of a Neal Adams cover. With our $100 budget, you should be able to bring home a VF range copy of Action 419 if your collection needs a little more Neal Adams goodness. X-Men 97 just wrapped up, and one of the characters that was heavily featured in the show's first season made their comic book debut in our number 9 book, New Mutants 87. That's right, our time-slipping telekinetic mutant Cable shows up for the first time as an adult in the March 1990 issue of New Mutants. The character had previously debuted as an infant in Uncanny X-Men 201 before being shipped off to the future. The issue's story, titled A Show of Power, was written by Louise Simonson and drawn by Rob Liefeld, who also penciled the cover with an assist from Todd McFarlane on the inks. Also debuting in New Mutants 87 is the Mutant Liberation Front, and most notably Strife, who would later be revealed to be Cable's long-term nemesis. Recent sales for this one have come in right at our $100 budget for high-grade raw copies. This is likely assisted by the fact that New Mutants issues had gigantic print runs at this time, so the supply of this book tends to keep the price from getting too out of hand. One of the movies I'm anxiously waiting for this summer is the inspiration for our number 8 book. Bursting its way into the number 8 spot is Alien: The Illustrated Story number 1. This is one of those random magazine-sized books that I'd seen around shows for a long time before I finally learned what it was. Once I'd figured that out, I just had to have one. And as I mentioned in the intro for this book, I'm really looking forward to Alien Romulus, which comes out later this summer in August. We don't know a lot about the movie just yet, but one thing we do know is that it's set between the original Alien and the sequel Aliens. So what better way to get ready for that than to check out this 1979 illustrated book for the original Alien movie. Believe it or not, Alien: The Illustrated Story was published by Heavy Metal magazine. Creative duties for this issue fell to artist Walt Simonson and writer Archie Goodwin, who adapted the Dan O'Bannon and Ron Shusett screenplay. This beefy 68-page offering closely lines up with the movie and is a great way to experience that story in a different medium. This would be the first full published appearance of a xenomorph, though an 8-page preview of the illustrated story was actually published in the May 1979 issue of Heavy Metal. 9 years later, in Aliens number 1 from Dark Horse Comics, the aliens would make their first appearance in an original comic book story. High-grade raw copies will run upwards of $100, but mid-grade and reader copies can be found for significantly less, in addition to a modern reprint of the story if you're interested on checking this thing out with a more restrictive budget. And since we're talking about magazine-sized books, let's just keep that going with our number 7 book, which features Marvel's Daywalker, Blade the Vampire Hunter, in Marvel Preview number 3. Sooner or later, Blade's going to make his way to the MCU. I know this is something you've probably heard for years at this point, but chances are it's probably going to happen, so let's talk about why this book is relevant. Marvel Preview was a mid-1970s Marvel magazine series that was really a bit of a mixed bag. The previous issue featured the origin of the Punisher, the next issue would include the first appearance of Star-Lord, and a few issues after that you'd get the first appearance of Rocket Raccoon. But issue 3 was all about Blade. We get a bit of an origin story here, but the main thing that Marvel Preview 3 gives Blade is some new supporting characters in Di Thomas and Afari, with Afari being the most significant of the pair. Afari was Blade's teacher and a father figure who trained him in the ways of vampire hunting. The 56 pages of story were all written by Chris Claremont, while artists Tony DiZuniga and Rico Rival split the artist duty. Painter Gray Morrow provided the cover art for the September 1975 issue, and based on the current market, our $100 budget should give you the ability to pick up a VF to near mint range copy of this one. I should probably pull the trigger on one of these myself, since it's one of the few key issues I'm missing from this title. The algorithm has me figured out, because my feed is full of posts recently about us being halfway to Halloween, which, as you know, is one of my favorite days of the year. With that in mind, let's celebrate making it halfway to Halloween here in the number 6 spot with a hauntingly fun selection of Fright number 3. Published by Eternity in September 1988, Fright 3 is the first cover appearance of Freddy Krueger, the star of Wes Craven's 1984 slasher classic, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Inside the issue, there's a write-up and stills from a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, which I assume would be from Nightmare 4, The Dream Master. It was released in 1988 as well, but I'm just guessing here. The following year, Marvel would publish Freddy Krueger's A Nightmare on Elm Street number 1, which would be the character's first official comic book appearance and origin. The 80s and 90s horror movie comics are a genre that flew under my radar for quite a while as a vendor, but they have a surprisingly strong following in the crossover of comic and horror fans. Recently, sales have been fairly strong for this particular issue, but a good-looking VF range copy is definitely within our budget. But with a little patience and maybe even a little luck, you might be able to find a deal on an even nicer copy for that same $100 budget. Gliding its way into the number 5 spot is an underappreciated Bronze Age issue that pits best friends against each other when Harry Osborn becomes the new Green Goblin in Amazing Spider-Man 136. Cover dated September 1974, this issue is just a few days away from celebrating its 50th birthday, as it actually hit newsstands on June 11, 1974. Writer Jerry Conway was fresh off of a busy streak of killing off key established characters and then introducing a bunch of new characters after the fact. That's right, the same guy who gave us the deaths of Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn also gave us Man-Wolf, Jackal, the Punisher, the Spider-Mobile, and Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin. John Romita handled the cover art duties, while the interiors were from Ross Andrew. The Harry Osborn Green Goblin was the Green Goblin many of us grew up with, as he was the man behind the mask until May 1993's Spectacular Spider-Man 200. But most importantly, Harry's version of the Goblin was also the version last seen in the Spider-Man cartoon from the 1990s. So, if we would happen to get a Spider-Man 98 show, Harry's first issue as the Green Goblin might see a tick up in popularity and maybe even value. Recent sales suggest that upper VF to lower near mint copies should be attainable on the higher end of our $100 budget, if that's something that interests you. Making a splash at the number 4 spot is the first full comic book appearance of SpongeBob SquarePants in SpongeBob Comics number 1. Published in February 2011 by United Plankton Pictures, it's hard to imagine that it took nearly 12 years for SpongeBob to officially break into the comics. The character had a number of non-comic print appearances before this, and he even had a cameo appearance in the 2007 Marvel Comics Presents series. SpongeBob number 1 contains a bunch of short stories inside, with a variety of creative teams behind them, and I'll spare you the parade of creators involved with the interior, but the cover artist for this issue was Sherm Cohen. Looking at this book, I think it's a smart long-term hold. SpongeBob just celebrated his 25th anniversary. A special series preview aired on May 1st, 1999, following Nickelodeon's Kids' Choice Awards, and the show continues to this very day. Very few IPs remain relevant long enough that they appeal to multiple generations of fans. A few that come to mind are The Simpsons, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Transformers, and so on. One of these days, younger millennials may find themselves chasing nostalgia like the elder millennials are today, and properties like Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and SpongeBob are almost certain to be on their short lists. Recent Buy It Now sales have been just beyond our $100 budget. It seems like certain impatient buyers are willing to pay that convenience fee, while multiple recent auction sales have closed for well within our budget. If this is a book that you would like to add to your collection, I would suggest waiting for an auction sale to see just how good of a deal you can find. Space may be cold and dark, but the Silver Surfer is starting to heat back up. While there's no way we can add the Silver Surfer's first appearance to a $100 budget list, that doesn't mean that we're out of luck. Our number 3 book is Fantastic Four Annual number 5, and amongst other things, this issue includes the first ever solo Silver Surfer story. Cover dated November 1967, FF Annual 5 is more widely known as the first appearance of the villain Psycho Man. And while a notable villain's first appearance is generally enough to earn a spot on this list, that's not why we're here. All the way in the back of this 68-page annual, we find a story titled The Peerless Power of the Silver Surfer. Clearly, alliteration was the word of the day when they cooked this one up. For the first time, Marvel was giving the Surfer an opportunity to shine in a story all his own. It seems to me that this really was just a trial run for the character, and it was not a coincidence that within a year, Silver Surfer number 1 was in the stands. One of the weirdest collection buys I've ever made pretty heavily involved this book. I was working at my old LCS, and somebody walked in with a small box of comics they wanted to sell. 21 comics in total. Or should I say 21 copies of Fantastic Four Annual number 5. 10 to 12 years ago, that was a very odd thing to see. Mid-grade raw copies are consistently selling for below $50, but as is the case with most Silver Age square-bound books, the price ramps up pretty quickly when you get into the higher grades. For our $100 budget, I would target a VF range copy of this one if it's something you'd like to add to your collection. Just missing the top spot is a rare appearance on the top 10 of a 1:25 ratio variant that ties into an upcoming theatrical release. 2014's Harley Quinn number 1, the 1:25 Adam Hughes variant. That's right, Harley Quinn is returning to the silver screen in October 2024's Joker 2. But unlike the character's previous big screen portrayals, Lady Gaga is our mentally unstable psychiatrist Harleen Quinzel in this one. Published by DC Comics in February 2014, when this thing hit the stands, it was instantly hot, just like about every Hughes variant of the time. The issue was written by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, with Chad Hardin interior art. Honestly, there's not much else to cover here. Adam Hughes draws great covers, particularly covers that feature female characters, and people like that. A recent raw copy sold at auction for just $86, while a Buy It Now sold for $120 a few weeks prior. Slab copies of this issue and higher grades run hundreds of dollars, but if you can track down a raw copy, chances are you will probably be able to pick it up for right around $100 in the current market. Just watch out for the international variant that looks pretty much the same. Don't get that confused with this one. Ruling over the top 10 comics on a $100 budget list for the spring of 2024 is a book that features the first appearance of one of the X-Men's most devious villains. Our number 1 book is Ms. Marvel number 18, the first full appearance of Mystique. Beginning with Ms. Marvel number 16, Mystique began making cameo appearances disguised as different characters in Ms. Marvel. Finally, in June 1978's Ms. Marvel number 18, Raven Darkholme, now known as Mystique, is revealed in her true and classic blue form. A pair of X-Men legends were directly involved with Ms. Marvel 18. Dave Cockrum provides the cover art for this one, while the story was written by none other than Chris Claremont. The interior art was provided from Jim Mooney. Let's go ahead and throw out an X-Men 97 spoiler warning. If you haven't finished Season 1, you may want to skip over this part. Final spoiler warning. Okay, so one surprising absence in X-Men 97's first season is that of Mystique. She played a significant role in the original cartoon series, and with those past associations and the direction that we appear to be heading for Season 2, I won't be surprised if Mystique pops back up when the X-Men return to Disney Plus for the next season. Recent sales have been surprisingly low for this issue as of late. Bronze Age books in general have definitely taken a beating, but this one seems particularly severe to me. Mystique has been such an essential part of the X-Men universe for decades at this point, and you can pick up a VF Plus range copy of her first appearance for $100 or less right now. As low as prices are, I'm honestly sitting here considering upgrading my own PC copy. And so it begins. The spring top 10s have arrived. As of the recording of this video, we're moving into Memorial Day weekend here in the US, which, while it may still officially be spring, it's kind of the start of summer in my mind. If you're able to, I hope you can get out and spend some time with family and friends this weekend, and maybe even find an opportunity to pick up some new comics. It's hard to imagine, but 2024 is already 40% complete. How are you doing on your collecting goals for this year? There's still plenty of time left if you haven't gotten off to a strong start. The most important thing is that you're having fun in the hobby. Some years we knock it out of the park. Some years the wish list doesn't see much action, but we usually wind up with stuff that we never expected. You never know what you might find out there. Have a plan, but don't be too afraid to open the door when opportunity knocks. Collect responsibly. I'll see you in the next video.